Thank you, President, and I'd like to rise to speak briefly on this bill. As speakers before have said, this is a very broad piece of legislation that's covering a number of other acts and a number of areas of our agriculture industry. And I note Dr. Cummings' contribution that I think many of us have received some quite alarmist emails about what this bill might do, whether it's pulling up people's veggie gardens in their back gardens or impacting on the biodynamic industry or the organic industry. So I've no doubt that certainly some of the correspondence I've received has cleared up some of those concerns and found that they're unwarranted. But the area that I just want to touch on today is where the amendments to how we treat hemp licences and how we treat the small but burgeoning hemp industry in Victoria. As many of you know, we established a hemp task force here in this Parliament. I'm fortunate to be a member of that task force. And this was really to look at the challenges and opportunities that the industry is facing. And I'm pleased to say that this bill does go to some of those challenges, and particularly one in particular, which was around aligning our low THC value, aligning the THC allowed in hemp plants across the nation. So we will have a standardised measurement for that, which will enable for much greater import-export, particularly across our state borders. But this product has incredible potential. It is quite an extraordinary plant, and it's a crop that Victoria should not be trying to should be doing everything in its power to enable and to build. Hemp has been in this nation and has been in Australia since the first fleet. Hemp seeds came out with Sir Joseph Banks. There's some theories that not only were we designed to be a penal colony, but we were designed to be a hemp colony. Because as we know, back in the 18th century, the British Navy survived on hemp. The British Navy did not exist without hemp. Its sails were made of hemp, its rope was made of hemp, its uniforms were made from hemp, and most of its hemp came from Russia. So we were seeing some of those Crimean wars way back there, and I think it's a timely reminder today, but not that we buy much of our hemp from Russia anymore. But the reason that they looked at hemp down in Australia was because they were worried about the regular supply of hemp coming from the Russian nations back in the late 18th century. So hemp has been in this country for well over 200 years. It's been a product that's been grown for thousands of years. You look at some of the most ancient Chinese manuscripts that still exist, they were made from hemp paper, and they still exist because they were made from hemp. So, and now, hemp is making plastics. It's cleaning up toxic soils. It's cleaning up toxic water. It's got innumerable uses. It will. When we look at the bioplastic polymers, and if anyone's interested, I've got a hemp bowl in my office that is so strong. It is so strong. I literally have thrown it around the car park here, trying to break it. It will not scratch. It will not break. It is an extraordinary product. Really, it's quite, in a weird way, it's quite magical. It's extremely light, it's extremely strong, it's biodegradable, and it's renewable. Unlike petroleum-based plastics we're using now, products that feel just like plastic are made from just grounding up the hemp stalk. You just ground it up, mix it with water, make yourself some plastic. In fact, there's a company, sadly not in Victoria, but is operating now out of Tasmania, that is looking to supply little disposable salad bowls for Woolworths and Coles. because they can do a translucent one. So I'm just trying to paint that hemp is an incredibly diverse and important crop. And it should be the future for paper in Victoria. In fact, it should be the future for timber in Victoria. Also, if you're interested, I've also got some composite hemp products that mimic a 4x2 plank, that mimic plywood, but are stronger. And rather than waiting for 20 years for a tree to grow, it takes 4 months for a hemp plant to grow. 1 acre of hemp can produce as much paper as 4 to 10 acres of trees. Every opportunity I get to talk about hemp, I will. And so we're saying that 1 acre of hemp produces as much paper as 4 to 10 acres of trees, and the hemp takes 4 months to grow, compared to the 10 to 20 or even 80 years that we need for the trees. It's got a far higher concentration of cellulose than wood, so that's why it goes further. These are just 2 products, but it can do rope, it can do textiles, it can do clothing, it can do shoes, food, insulation, hempcrete, and biofuel. So you literally can you could run a city on hemp. And in fact, just as I was looking at some hemp buildings the other night, 1 acre of hemp will build a building. So you could actually grow your own buildings in Victoria in 4 months rather than in the decades that it would take to do that with timber. So as I mentioned, I support the aspects of this bill that align the THC values across the jurisdictions, and that's something that the Hemp Task Force really did. We made those recommendations. But the hemp industry says we need a goal of 1 million acres. And at the moment, I think we're at about 288 hectares. So we've got a long way to go. So we need to be encouraging agriculture to take on this crop. And this bill doesn't do that. So what we heard loud and clear from farmers and people involved in the industry is that we needed to remove the stigma around hemp. And there still is significant stigma around hemp. They don't see it's been caught up in the kind of hard-on drugs cannabis debate for decades, for centuries. In fact, it was that link that was erroneously made earlier in the 1950s that led to a real prohibition on hemp, which has put hemp is only really coming back in this century again. So we needed to simplify and streamline those licences. I acknowledge there has been some improvements in that area where I think the last tranche of changes to those licences went way too broad. We were looking for police records of a stepson or of we took a very broad definition, and I'm pleased to see that this legislation this bill has narrowed that. But still, the fact that you've got in this bill that the police commissioner can veto a hemp licence, this sends a really completely wrong message about what a hemp crop is. A hemp crop is not a cannabis crop. It is not an opium poppy crop. It is a crop that makes great paper, makes great clothes, could make great plastic, could make great houses, could make great roads, could make great hempcrete sound barriers. It should not be taken to this much higher level of licensing as if it's somehow dangerous. And I note also, and SARC noted this in their report, that the exemption out of the spent conviction scheme. So even if someone had a very historical conviction for something, that would be disclosed in deciding whether this person could have a hemp licence. I mean, you'd probably get more danger out of growing a rapeseed crop. You'd certainly, if you were growing acacia, the type of poisons and drugs you can pull out of acacia, DMT for one, is far more dangerous than this. And you're not asking for licences for people to grow acacia, even though, very dangerous substances could be produced from that. So I'll signal now that I intend to vote against, the very least, the clauses 57 and 58 of this bill. Look, I think it was a real missed opportunity, that we should have got ahead of the curve here, that this bill should have been about promoting the hemp industry, about promoting the opportunities of hemp in Victoria, rather than what I'm seeing here, that it's further stigmatising, it's further telling potential growers that this is a dangerous crop, that the police commissioner may have a role in deciding whether you can grow it or not. So as I say, I think it's a missed opportunity. We still have a hemp task force, so I'm still optimistic that we can start promoting this industry in Victoria in other meaningful ways. But on that note, I'll finish my contribution and look forward to listening to the committee of the whole.